How's it, Dream Team? I can't even believe I get to say that. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 3 of The Good, the Bad and the Rugby, brought to you by Continental Tires. If you are listening to this and you're going, what happened to Alex's voice? It's because he's not here. My name is Elma Smit. We get to unveil the brand new The Good, the Bad and the Rugby set, which is good fun for me. I got to decorate it quite a bit as well. There's a lot of green on this one today as well, which is great. And to balance out this very special occasion where we get to go all Southern Hemisphere in our focus for the next hour or so, I'm joined by former All Black fly half and, of course, an absolute favourite around Harlequins, Nick Evans. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you.
Elma, lovely to be here.
And, a Rugby World Cup winner, Bob Skinstad, just strolling in here from Surrey.
Thanks, Elma. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you back on the show. I think the last time Bob Skinstad was here, I don't think the two things had anything to do with one another, but Eddie Jones was sacked shortly after. Do we need to text someone?
Had nothing to
Someone's
do
in
with me,
trouble.
I promise you. But I think Hask and one of the guys were hoping for some comment from me then. I had no inside info, and now I've got no inside info about how Eddie's doing.
We're not warning Steve Borthwick of anything.
No, exactly.
We're just saying there was an interesting pattern last time around. We have no idea what the future holds. But he's here with the scoop, and we're going to get stuck into it. But before we get into all of the Southern Hemisphere men's rugby, where did you guys watch the Lionesses? And since none of us are originally from here, are we just supporting England when it's football? Is that okay?
Yeah, look, I definitely watched it. I've got a 10-year-old who's mad about football, and so he's a big England supporter, believe it or not. So he wants to play for England. So we definitely watched it. We watched it at home. Great final. I do believe, I think the better team won, probably in Spain, but I thought they did really brilliantly.
Great tournament. My little daughter plays cricket on a Sunday, and the cricket match was moved out so that they could all watch the game. My family have been enthralled by it. I think it was fantastic to see the Lionesses go that far into the tournament.
If you are a big rugby fan and a big eventer and you need something to mark your calendar alongside, then I've got good news, because the Rugby World Cup 2025, now that's the showpiece of the women's game, fixtures were announced this week. And if you live in Brighton, Bristol, Exeter, London, Manchester, Northampton, Sunderland or York, you will have the best of the women's teams from around the world playing right on your doorstep. So you might as well find a ticket, but also maybe a second team to support whilst they all ship into town. I saw the news that Ernie Els's daughter is also joining the women Boks team. So, I mean, we're attracting South Africans from the USA back to go play women's rugby in South Africa. So we're doing really well.
Well, Ernie was quite a good second row / back row player in his day, and now his daughter's going to be representing South Africa in the same thing. So he'll be jetting around the world to watch us. I suppose maybe golf and rugby in the afternoon or something like that.
There's some good genes there, isn't there, really? Let's be honest. There's some good sporting genes there, so I'm sure she's going to do very well.
Now, speaking of good genes, Sam Matavesi will be joining us live from the Fijian team hotel. We're not only focusing on South Africa and New Zealand. We will be talking about all of our neighbours in the Southern Hemisphere. But there were 4 big internationals over the weekend. The reigning world champs, South Africa, overpowering an inexperienced Welsh side. I thought it would be a win, but that 1652 scoreline was emphatic. Ireland looked like the number 1 side they are against England. Italy were buoyed by the return of Ange Capozzo, 57-7 over Romania, and France-Fiji. Close until, I'd say, probably the third quarter. Sekou Makalu intercept going under the posts there. We are recording on Monday. So look out for more bonus content this week, as the guys will be reacting. You won't only hear from us this week on the disciplinary outcomes around Farrell and, of course, the Vunipola tackles. But Nick, as a former England coach,
yes,
tell me how you feel when you watch a game like you did on Saturday.
Yeah, it's I'm a little bit divided here, because obviously I was in the camp for Six Nations, and they're getting hammered, and in the press and by the wider community and England fans, and I see it. I definitely see it. I think I kind of in a bit of an understanding of what they're trying to do in terms of leading to the World Cup. The plan was Eddie Jones was going to take this team to the World Cup. He got pushed aside. Steve has come in. There was not a lot of time. I think if I give you a bit of context, I had a week with the team to implement some sort of attacking structure before the Six Nations. Before that, we led into the Scotland week. So the main focus was trying to be hard to beat, get a defensive system in place, and get your kicking game in place. The problem I see now is that they've had 8 weeks to now try and implement some kind of attacking structure, and we just probably haven't seen that. Well, we definitely haven't seen that, and it's tough to watch. I think when you've got the likes of a Kerr, a Marcus Smith, especially in that first Welsh game, and Dombrant was there as well with Marchant. You've got a spine of a team that can play footy, that wants to play footy. You've got to allow them the confidence to go and do that. And we just saw them hamstrung by a plan that was going out there to try and be hard to beat. You can have your fundamentals in place. You can be hard to beat, but you've then got to develop and push on and try and beat teams through a different way. And we're just not seeing that at the moment. And I think, for me, a bit of the discipline that we're seeing may be a little bit of a byproduct of maybe players not happy and players not being able to take control and maybe push their attacking style of game.
I actually think it ends up being a confidence issue for the players. I mean, none of those players have changed. I think confidence, I mean, we've seen, we were talking golf earlier, we've seen amazing golfers go from you hit every green, every fairway and sink every putt to just can't put it, can't put 3 shots in a row together. And for me, they looked a little bit like a rugby player who knows what to do, but he's just maybe a bit nervous of doing all of it. And that 90% off Ireland is just going to smash you, and they did.
I think also because obviously there'll be a lot of England fans listening to this, and it will be negative. I think this is a little bit similar to 2007, where they had an English side that was a little bit not really sure how they were going to play. I think there was a bit of talk about bit of disharmony in the group, and they
had an interim coach.
They had an interim coach. They went all the way through all the way through to the final. And probably arguably should have won it. Maybe what they will be, and if the game, and we all know, I mean, certainly I've been to World Cup. Bobby's won it. Is the game tightens up in the World Cup?
Time.
The game will tighten up. And the fundamentals will get tested even more. And one thing England will be good at the World Cup will be around the fundamentals of kicking, and they will be defensively, hopefully, in a better place. Their attack might not be where it needs to be, and I'm all for that. That needs to get better, and it should be better than it is now. But if the game does get tight, and they are in a tight battle, we saw against Wales, down to 12, they did fight back. So I'm trying to give the England fans a little bit of something here. I think if they get to that point, they may.
I'll expand on the analogy with golf. So I've been getting worse and worse at golf for a long time, but love it to bits. But I was doing some reading into the psychology the other day, and the world's foremost putting expert at the moment has written a book saying, at no stage should you do a practice swing on the golf course.
What?
Because he's saying it's got nothing to do with hitting the ball. Okay, your mind is going through something that's different. Everyone does this nice, loose, big practicing. What you should be doing is getting in behind the ball and getting the ball towards the hole. And now what we're talking about here is how that worry of missing that hole cramps you up so quickly. So you think you're loosening yourself up. And I'm talking exactly the same thing. A Rugby World Cup puts 100 times the pressure on every instance of attack and defense. If the England team play like they did against Ireland, they'll actually probably be better off in a Rugby World Cup because the other team won't be as free with what they're doing and not worried about throwing the ball around, etc. It does. It's like going down this channel that gets tighter and tighter and tighter and squeezes the life out of you. But it's really difficult to build a team on that.
What was interesting on the TV coverage on the weekend when they cut to the change room, I'm always a little interested in the structure of what halftime looks like when they give you those change room shots. Sometimes there's lots of little groups of people with like an attack coach or a defense coach or a scrum coach speaking to separate people. And the coach might say something, but then people kind of break out and it's quite relaxed. Some people sit on the ground. I think Cheslin was sitting on the ground during the South Africa one. And on the England one, everyone was sitting very neatly in their little cubby, everyone facing forward. You're smiling already. Why are you smiling?
No.
And
I've been there. I've been in there.
And Steve standing in the middle. And,
big red flag.
Yeah. And everyone's face is turned towards him, and it looked formal.
Yeah, like it's having been in that changing room.
Yeah.
I know kind of how it works. And you probably only saw maybe a little snippet
Yeah.
of what goes on, because there is a split. They do split forwards and backs. There is a game leader section to it too, where Steve will talk to the main leaders of the team, get how they're feeling, get one thing Steve is brilliant at, and I learned a lot from when I was in there, especially is his theming of a week and his ability to get a game plan across and motivate these players. I don't think there's an issue about these players going out there motivated and wanting to do well. We can get onto the technical and tactical reasons and things like that, but certainly he likes to that last little bit of the changing room is stand up and get in front of the players and be a real dominant voice for them, so they can be crystal clear. Clarity is everything to Steve, and that's one thing I certainly learned from him. So there's no doubt there's not a clarity issue on them going out. I just think there's either a plan or there's a technical tactical that's not quite working there at the moment. Certainly for me, if you look at it, Ireland and the teams that are attacking well, their contact area is superior to England at the moment. Their breakdown work, too many times I'm seeing them slow their ball down, own ball down. People are waiting, they're not quite in positions, but teams are getting there and slowing the ball down. I think you watch Ireland, you watch New Zealand, we'll probably talk about them, we will talk about them at the moment. They are rapid in their contact work. Before they're even hitting the ground, the ball is available and it's gone.
Weird point from the side, and it's more a question to you because you, in the day-to-day, you see this. Like, culturally, if a team absolutely are aligned with where they're all going, etc., I feel that it makes it easier to make a decision to fully back the person who's in front of you. You know, you clean out a ruck 0.5% faster if you know what the guy, that you and him are on the same journey together. And at test match level, that shows much more.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think if there's an identity of how you're trying to play, if there's a and
if you buy into
plan,
it,
if everyone's bought into it, then I wouldn't say it's seamless because it never is seamless.
No.
But certainly you see the teams at the top, the France, the Islands, and New Zealand, certainly, and South Africa's as well. Any decision is backed up by the next two players. And specifically, we're talking about a ruck here, or if it could be a kick, it could be a kick chase.
Yeah, kick chase.
Kick chase is a great one because a kick will go up, and if there's a committed kick chase, it's really obvious to see people that aren't buying into that.
Right.
The ruck's the same. As soon as someone takes it into contact, it's very easy to see if they're a half second or a quarter of a second behind and not quite fully committed to what that person's doing.
And I think the reason I'm just trying to say it is that if you lose faith in this England team right now, it's wrong. There's more factors than these being the wrong players. I think it's more about buying into that and going forward, and that's about that's about everything. Who's the skipper, who's the coach, and where do they go?
We haven't spoken about Ireland nearly enough. I'm only asking because South Africa will be facing them. Bob, La Rochelle showed how to beat Leinster in Dublin. If anyone has seen like a blueprint for how to do that there, is there anything we've learned over the last few weeks about how to neutralise the threat that Ireland poses? Are you at all concerned about that game?
La Rochelle showed that big, fast, committed, physical men will eventually wear you down if you make some mistakes. And they literally, they did to Leinster what Leinster have done to other people at speed, coming around the side of the ruck or whatever, and physically they withstood them. So I think this Irish team are fantastic. I think they're very well drilled. I'm excited about everybody's moaning about the picks. I think we've got a World Cup with really, really important games early on.
Yeah.
For the first time, because the last two World Cups I think almost went according to plan to quarterfinal stage. South Africa dropped in 2015, dropped to Japan, but still made it through. It's like Japan for me probably should have qualified for that because it was an amazing win, but they didn't. So now the World Cup looks like there's going to be one or two of the top 8 in the world who won't make it to quarterfinals.
So the pool games are more important than they have ever been, at least on one side of the draw. Also, shout out to the amazing flurry that Keith Earls managed to just round out his 100th test match on. That was just like really feel-good factor. And you don't even have to be an Ireland fan to just have enjoyed the 9th Irish Centurion. Will he go to a 4th Rugby World Cup? Who knows? It's time for our High Flyers of the Week segment brought to you by our good friends at British Airways. Now, Nick, what positives can England take out of that game? Was there an...
Here we go. I'll lift my voice. I can change my tone a bit here.
Come on.
Here we go.
Individual performance.
Individual. Look, I think England looked a lot more dangerous when Danny Care was on the pitch.
That's true.
And I thought he lifted the tempo. And one thing Danny does do well is he will get the ball in and he'll get the ball away fast. You can combine that with either George Ford or with Marcus Smith. So I definitely saw a lift in tempo. I saw a lot of, all of a sudden, actually just attacking space and not worrying about where I am in terms of shape and structure. There was just actually, this is quick ball. Can we get another quick ball scenario off the back of that? And Danny was a big part of that. Danny is a world-class kicker as well. I don't think a lot of people give them credit, whether that's because he plays at Quins and we tend to not kick that much, although we do a lot. But he's a big part of how we kick. And I think he's a world-class kicker when he does kick off 9, and he's a big attacking kick threat as well. So I think England fans, the more we can see of Danny Care combined with Marcus maybe, or combined with George, certainly I think you'll see a better attacking performance.
Can I ask a quick question? And I probably should know this, but when Marcus and Owen were vying for the same position and played starting, Danny wasn't in that squad, am I right?
Was not.
So Danny and Marcus, for me, is a better prospect for England than just Marcus or just Danny?
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think it'll be whether Steve is game enough to start with a situation like that. I don't think he would.
Okay.
And I personally, I think George has got that attacking threat as well. I think
But even if both were coming off the bench, or 20 minutes,
your
30
ultimate
minutes,
scenario is you've got Marcus and Danny coming off the bench at 60, 50 minutes, and if England are in the game, I think they can change games. Just those two players can change games. We've seen it for Quins, and I think we've seen it before with England in certain parts. So I think that for me that would be the template. So I thought that Danny was our high flyer of the weekend.
And that wraps up our BA High Flyers segment. Thanks again to British Airways, who've brought original people, places, and cultures together for more than 100 years. Speaking of bringing people together, it felt like all of my people were in Cardiff on the weekend. Big win for South Africa, experimental Welsh side. How much do you actually take out of that, Bob? Like, do you look at that and feel like, oh, we've actually learned some things?
I'm not so sure about learning new things. I think maybe revising old work. Like, I was delighted for Sia Khaleesi. I thought he had a very good 40 minutes. 35 of the 40 minutes, he was probably the loose forward of the day on the field. Very pleased that a different looking backline was chosen and actually operated together, linked very well. I thought when the bomb squad came on with a play pattern that we've had in a while, they were very effective. They won the first 3 scrums in a row after they won a penalty of 2 of those first 3 scrums in a row. So, I mean, they did what they were supposed to do. Yeah. And I was happy for them for that.
It's probably out of my league here when we talk about forwards, but obviously we see them going 6-2 a lot. Like, do you think that's going to be a template? Obviously, we've seen them with 4 scrum halves, and Pollard's injured. I'm going to do it inverted collars. Like, are we going to see him? Like, I still think he's going to come out of the shadows somewhere. But do you think that's going to be a template going through this 6-2, or could they even go a 7-1 and just fully committed from this bomb squad? Come on and just kind of demolish teams that way.
The weird thing is, so both of our reserve scrum halves who've been around the team, Reinach and Williams, are the 2 fastest and second fastest in the squad. So you've immediately got a wing replacement, which is and literally a guy who's actually played SA School's wing. So it's not like just shoving him to where they used to do with us flanks. We say, but go onto the wing. Maybe I think that we rely very heavily on physical dominance in the last third of the game. So our scrums and lineouts and counter drives in lineouts are incredibly solid in that last third, and that's when you've got 5 replacements of forwards guaranteed who've come on. It depends who we play against, and it depends how they play. I mean, we came unstuck against the All Blacks playing a fantastic free running game against us. We clawed our way back into that game in New Zealand when the bomb squad came on. So it's just how much they believe in their own replacement theorem, if you want.
Now, if my family WhatsApp group is to be believed, Marty Libbock's kicking success rate is going to be the thing that'll tank the Springboks. Everyone is flipping out about this so much. As a fly half, talk to me about Marty Libbock.
Yeah, had a good close look at him when we played the Stormers in the Heineken Cup and Champions Cup, and I was really impressed. Really impressed with his attacking game. Like his attacking kicking game was quality. He actually kicked pretty well against us that day as well. Again, I think we go back to what you said around the World Cup. When you get into these big games, how does he operate under that pressure? He didn't kick well on the weekend, and that World Cup is gonna be a big pressure, especially in tight games when you have to nail your kicks. And it might be a 3-6-9 game that is going to get you either pull away or is going to get you into a position to win the game. Kicking wins World Cups. It's a big part of winning them.
Do you think that there's a factor, so averages work out over a period of time?
Yeah.
So Marnie Lubbock for me is either on or off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not he doesn't sort of dribble in at 85% in a game. He's like either 100% or 50%. And then his average is 75. If you're not, do you know what I mean? It's not like he's 7 out of 9 or he's 6 out of 7. Like why is that? Is that a big game thing, or is that a start?
It can be a big game. It can be how his processes. It can be for me when I hear something like that, it's usually around a mindset.
Okay.
For me, it'd be around a mindset. Like I would, if you're like on an 80% kicker, you miss a couple. For me, you're still an 80% kicker. You can put that to the side, but sometimes missing a couple for someone that's not quite nailed on their procedure or something, all of a sudden you can have a couple where you go 50-50, 40, and then you kick 100. You think, oh, I'm back, but the graph just doesn't look the same. So hopefully he's not that. Hopefully he can have not a good kicking performance coming up in the weekend, but certainly from South Africa, hopefully during the pool stages he has a good kicking performance.
Jock Ninabit was at pains to point out that Faf played fly half at school at junior level. He's talking him up as a fly half solution, and then those who know say Handrè has been training at 12. And that he has been training, and that he is pretty much fit, and that it's just a question of when, not if. Is there a world in which, in this backline, you retain Marnie at fly half if Handrè is fit?
No way. For me personally, here, I don't. If you're retaining Marnie and you're putting Pollard at 12, and you've got Delande and Andre not involved, I don't see that.
Big Handrè fan.
I don't see that. I don't see those two not being involved somehow.
Yeah.
One or the other. Sorry. Like from a Kiwi supporter here, and I love Andre, and obviously Delande's probably got the nudge at the moment.
Yeah.
He's probably I don't know. Could be completely wrong here, but I don't see them playing without one of those big fellas in the centres. Yeah. I don't see that.
It's really interesting though. Like I'm obviously just watching this, and a lot of fans have been saying like they're touring with the team. Handrè's there, Lucanio's there. Like something's going to happen here. Just no one knows exactly like how things are going to shift.
Bobby knows. He just doesn't want to say. No. Jordan's smiling.
I wish I knew. But I am thinking about it all the time. Yeah. I tell you the one thing that I've got to say. And I know South Africans get a hard time about sometimes we're not amazing communicators from our national team level, etc. I've got to say that Jock and Rassie and the guys they're playing the game well. They're actually reminding me of some of the Kiwi teams we came up against, where the press conference said one thing, but then the team knew another. Do you know what I mean? Like well managed. Yeah. And we were always cross because they would outfox us.
Yeah.
They would sort of fox us in some thinking. We're like, we didn't see that coming. He's moved from that position to that, or whatever. And now suddenly I think that the South Africans are actually, it's not shadow boxing, but it's almost like, well, they've got an agenda which they're adhering to themselves, but the messaging is put there to at least throw a few people off the scent. I've got no problem with that.
Let's talk about ones to watch here, because there are so many exciting young players coming through the ranks. In terms of the South Africans, who are the ones that you think people don't know about yet?
I think people are seeing guys like Canan Moodie. This kid can go. He can really go. I mean, he's an outside centre at school. He's been playing on the wing and fullback for the Bulls. He makes incredible defensive decisions. He catches man and ball often. He's also big, fast, strong, doesn't miss his tackles. I think they probably haven't seen as much of him. He scored a great try against Australia, catching a kickoff ball. But besides that, at a national level, international level,
that was his debut.
That was his debut.
Yeah.
I think he's a fantastic player.
There was a great Canan Moodie anecdote recently that Jake White told reporters about Canan that really just underlies how young, and he really is young, but also how truly relatable and authentic he is. He said 2 weeks ago, the sponsor of the Bulls was showing fans around Loftus Versfeld on a Saturday morning. The men were off, but the women were playing. And Canan was the guy leading the tour. And then in the afternoon, after the fans who had come for the stadium tour left and the women were playing, they were playing a curtain raiser, and he was the ball boy. He's 19 and he volunteered on his off weekend to ball boy for the Daisies.
That's awesome.
How can you not love rugby?
No, exactly.
How can you not love this kid? South Africa versus New Zealand this Friday at Twickenham. One of the interesting talking points here is that it might be one of the last times they play one another in their green and black strip because of the new regulations that will come in effect apparently from 2025 being brought forward to the World Cup as well, being that teams can't play each other in two dark strips. So we have the green shirt on set and the old school all black shirt.
Oh, wow.
And 8% of men, only 0.5% of women, but 8% of men are affected by colour blindness. And
95% of referees. No, I
And-
never said that.
The South African win.
That's a joke. It's a joke.
But yeah, these two teams will be playing one another in the green and black strip that you know them and love them in. But there is a chance here that if they face one another in the Rugby World Cup, they will not be playing in green and black. One of them will be playing in an away strip. In South Africa's case, it's the colour of a bubblegum milkshake. I don't know if you've seen it with the Ndebele print on it. It's like turquoise blue.
Yeah, I think I have seen that.
Yeah, it's what they wore against Argentina.
So they could be wearing that.
They could be rocking that really wild get-up.
And we definitely won't be wearing a grey in the World Cup if we have to.
Because that really goes well for your
We're
Yeah,
doing that one
exactly.
again.
The second strip of South Africa against Argentina got quite a lot of negative comments about it, but I really liked it. I thought it was, I thought it was funky. I thought it was like out there. My son.
Did you just use the word funky?
I did. Are you allowed to at my age? No, I don't think so. But a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think looking at this weekend's game, I get it at night. Green and black, but are they that close?
Oh, I can't.
Also, when your shorts are white and their shorts are black, I mean, surely. And there's a contrast, and there's a contrast on the collar and the sleeve as well, even on the current Springbok kit.
Yeah.
So it is interesting, and this conversation will probably continue. I know that tons of letters have been written, and in the Afrikaans press, at this stage it's popping. So we'll see where the story goes, but you will see them wearing green and black at Twickenham.
That's good.
Which is such a storied occasion that I heard a story over the weekend from Nick Heath, who's a rugby commentator. His cousin is flying over from Ireland. He is not an All Blacks fan. He's not a Springboks fan. But I think it's really important as a supporter to understand the significance of the fact that these two teams are playing one another in a territory where a lot of fans wouldn't have the opportunity to ever see them playing one another outside of a Rugby World Cup.
I think so. I think the amount of people from both countries that live here and work here is huge as well. Like, I mean, I don't know how many Kiwis are, but there seems to be more and more all the time. And South Africans, like Southfield's is full of them. Earlsfield, unbelievable. Used to live there. So I think that in itself, but also like two top teams of the world with the top players, like, why would rugby fans, not want to come and watch and have an ability to come, especially people that don't get an opportunity to go to the World Cup, don't get to see these two teams play that often. I think it's brilliant, and I think hopefully they sell it out.
I think attach a big bonus to the commercial manager of either the RFU or Twickenham, because the matches that they've got, Australia, Fiji, South Africa, New Zealand, I mean, it's a whole different bunch of people. It's like the big match, the big bash, which is the one that Quins plays, the club. I mean, it just fills it up.
Big game.
The big game.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You know what I mean? All my mates are doing exactly that. They've got their families together and they're off to Twickenham to watch South Africa play the All Blacks. I think it's fantastic. Great for the game.
How much will they be showing their hands, though?
Well, actually, I mean, I know it's early in the week, but the South African team is out, and it's quite a strong team. It's quite a, I mean,
the backline's a bit changed, isn't it?
The
Is there 8
backline,
changes
the
on that?
backline's tweaked from last week, but I mean it's Libok, Mapimpi, Handrè, Canan Moodie at 13, Kurtley Arendse at 14, Damien at 15. They haven't played together in this format yet this year. A couple of guys have played those positions, but they, and suddenly they're taking on arguably their biggest sort of rival, or definitely their biggest rival, but the biggest sort of stepping stone, if you want, to get the side of the matches in the World Cup that they need. And they're trusting this starting lineup. But I mean, I think it's a team that you would go into a World Cup match with and be very happy with your starting lineup. Playing for South Africa like that.
Yeah, and I think the All Blacks will go reasonably strong.
Yeah,
I think they will. I think this is what have you got? We got 2.5 weeks to the first games. I don't think you don't want to be going in 3 weeks without a game, or with your top teams, your top players. There'll be a few combinations that I think you'll see. I think you'll see some, for example, say like Smith and Mo'unga start. You might be a few tweaks in the back line, a few tweaks in the forwards here and there, but I think they'll go reasonably strong, and then you might see an empty of the bench.
And it's 6-2.
And it's 6. There you go.
Hey.
There it is.
Yeah.
Wait for the 7-1.
Yeah. but Kobus Reinach.
Yeah, there you
so
go.
can go under the wing. You heard it here first from Nick Evans. You see,
I'll tell you what, they're going to do
He's
it.
called it.
The 7-1. He's called it. He's going to win a World Cup as a coach. He says, I invented the 7-1.
Yeah. Just hope South Africa don't pip you to the post. But let's talk about the All Blacks then. They have come on seemingly in leaps and bounds, and that's a lot to say for a team that has been so dominant over such a long time. But based on how people looked at them roughly a year ago, maybe a bit more, 14 months ago now, what has changed?
Yeah, I mean they were in a dark place, real dark place. And it's funny. I think I'll put in a bit of context. Obviously, you lose to Argentina at home for the first time. Like, obviously, lose a series to Ireland. And then they end up going away and they beat South Africa. I can't remember whereabouts they did. They did, didn't they? They beat South Africa. And from what I'm led to believe, that was going to be the tipping point. I think if there was a loss there was going to be a change.
Yeah.
They scored in the last minute and converted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
35-33.
And I think, and it's funny because everyone thinks, this is me personally, this is my opinion, I think the players were against Fozzie, but I don't think it was. I think the public, I think there was a big public who are around this, like Scott Razor Robinson coming through, and he was going to be the next one. Fozzie got the job. I think the players bought into Fozzie. I do. 100% they bought into Fozzie. They love Fozzie. I think there was going to be a bit of a transition process there. The public obviously didn't, the majority of the public wanted Razor Robinson, obviously the back of the performance that he's had, which is I 100% agree with. Like, he was one of our most successful Super Rugby coaches. But me personally, the players got in behind Fozzie, and I think you saw there from then on they've managed to get a real semblance of consistency with players available, and a plan that they've been put into. I think Joe Smit coming in has obviously helped. A real practitioner and a real surgeon around detail that maybe was lacking a little bit. From the previous regime was now brought in. They made the hard decision to drop a few coaches and bring a few others in. Jason Ryan. I mean, the biggest thing. I mean, their line out has gone from this to this. Like from one level to another. Like, they can defend more. Their line out delivery is brilliant. So they've now on a real upward trajectory, and for me in a really, really good place.
It was an interesting decision by New Zealand Rugby to name Razor as the successor so early on, because as soon as that came out, a lot of people looked at this World Cup and this All Black team going into a World Cup with the full knowledge that this coach, in a structure that has seen succession planning so adhered to so diligently for so many years, as a true sign of cracks. Where is that miscommunication come from? Why is it that the public is so vehemently pro Razor and seemingly so out of touch with where the players are with Fozzie?
I'd be interested to see how the public are now. I honestly think if you did a poll now, it'd be interesting to see if the public are happy with what's going on with the All Blacks. And I think you'd see there'd be a bit of a shift. I woke up the morning of when they did the Razor thing, and I was like, what are we doing? Like why would you do it now? And I don't know why. I have no idea why they would do it now. Maybe it's a masterstroke. I don't know. Could it be a masterstroke? I don't think so. I think there was going to be a transition, and this is what they're going to do. I think it's given Fozzie an opportunity to go, well, let's go. Let's double down on everything that we're doing. Let's coach even harder. Almost a bit of stick it up to you, you know, like I'm going to go and win it. Then I'll give it to the next guy coming through.
I think you say masterstroke. I think it relieves all of the pressure because Razor doesn't expect. Now remember, you've got a 9-month run-in. Okay, after that announcement, you got a 9-month run-in, which would have had 9 months of speculation around it. You know, you lose the first game in your pool that's ever been lost by New Zealand at a World Cup, and everyone's, I told you, Razor. But now they go, no, that's okay. We've lost that game. Razor's going to come in. But Fozzie's got. You know, Ian Foster is an outstanding rugby coach. He's been part of a legacy of outstanding rugby coaches that have handed on, you know, a new dimension in sort of coach care, player care, and wanting to be part of the future. But he knows when his tenure is going to come to an end, so he's got a crescendo to go to. It's like I think it answered all the questions in the most amazing, concise way. It was like, we got it. He's doing super well at that level. He's going to be part of it. He'll have an overseeing role, and then he gets a fresh sheet of paper after this World Cup. In the meantime, we back this guy. And the public were like, okay, like that. No problem. And just pressure gone. Think about that. I mean, it's pressure gone.
There's still tons of pressure. You're playing France, game 1. I mean, even with Ian Foster in charge, even if you're not a fan of him, you don't want to lose that game.
No, we don't want to lose that game. But again, like I can just see us hammering France and then meeting them in the final. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of these things that I can just see France have got that game. Have they still got that game in them in a World Cup? You know, like when they lose to New Zealand, they lose to Tonga or something like that, and then they go and arguably should have beaten us in 2011. It's no, look, I think there's always pressure. There's a pressure no matter what, whether you're putting the jersey on or whether you're coaching. The expectation is that we beat France, and I know you know a lot of us are picking, or not myself, but a lot of people are picking France to win it. But the expectation from New Zealand will be we go there, we beat France in the first game, we get out of our pool, we do our job on our side and get to the final, and then meet whoever we meet, possibly France again.
Who would you least like to meet in the final?
South Africa. Me personally, I think so. And again, I think South Africa, for me, are best equipped to win the knockout games. The way they play, the makeup of their team, the physicality that they showed, the depth that they have coming off the bench, where they do 6-2, 5-3, 7-1, whichever they do. But for me, I'm more worried about them than I would be around. And I'm not saying I'm not worried about France. I'm not saying I'm worried about Ireland or anything like that. I just think, for me personally, I watch South Africa. I see the depth that they have. If they do get the players that they get back out of injury, the Pollards, the Ams, if they get them back, and they've got a full complement to go into in that World Cup, I think they're best equipped. So I would least like to play them in a final.
But this is a team you've gone against so well in the recent Rugby Championship. That doesn't make sense.
No, it does make sense because they're a different beast when they go to a World Cup. Like South Africa are a different beast. They can turn the game into such an ugly game. I'll say it, an ugly game. It's not going to be like a rugby championship. It's not going to be like how we put 30 points on them or 20 points on them because we won the aerial battle. Like they'll be a different team. The game becomes ugly. It becomes niggly. It stops start. There's no fluency to the game. That's what South Africa is about, and they operate best when it becomes that. Other teams will struggle with that. So if it does become that, and I would least likely to play against a team like that in a World Cup final. Me personally.
Very telling. Very, very interesting. Who out of the All Blacks have impressed you the most this year, Bob?
To be honest, I think it's going to sound like I'm just harking back to like old school, but like the Whitelocks of the world, the people who've been in the engine room for such a long time, the heartbeat of that team, went through I don't know, what is it, what's the analogy? They went through the surgery of the Foster sort of reignition of the team, and then they came out stronger. So I really think that they've been outstanding. I mean, for me, it's those just the plodders who've been more than plodders, have actually been the ignition.
I think sometimes we underestimate the depth in terms of that wealth of experience. Most experienced New Zealand Rugby World Cup squad ever. 4 Centurions.
Yeah,
Got
that's
400
unbelievable.
caps between Whitelock, Retallick, Smith and Barrett. That is, I mean, that's massive. And considering you have so many steady hands there, who are the ones to watch, Nick?
Yeah, I think, as I said, most experienced squad is probably when we pick probably a player that's probably played 20. I looked at him and say Will Jordan just come out to 20 caps. I think he's going to be one to watch. What I love about him is like he scores tries for a start. He reminds me of Caleb Ralph. Remember Caleb Ralph? Caleb Ralph just scores tries, just turns up in the right positions and scores tries. He's good defensively. He's good under the high ball, can cover all the back three. And what suits me as well with Will is if you go Smith, Mwanga, if they go this round, just say Geordie Barrett 12, say Bowden. Will Jordan also gives you that other kicking option. He's got a good kicking game. He kicks a lot. He's this long kicking game that they're starting to play at the moment. We've spoken about it. When the games tighten up, quarters, semis, finals, and kicking becomes actually even more important. Will's got that ability. It's not just Bowden at the back now.
Yeah.
You've got Will Jordan at the back, who quite often finds himself under the high ball more often than Bowden does, and he's got the ability to go 22 to 22, which you got to stick in those kicking battles. So for me, I think Will Jordan from a back's point of view, and maybe the new enforcer Scott Barrett. I've been really impressed how he's been, how he's kind of transitioned. I mean, he's probably on 30, 40 tests now. Maybe he's more at 50. I don't know. 50. He's got 50. He's just at 50.
Where did that go from?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where's that gone? So it's hard for him to watch, but he, for me, around the Rugby Championship was brilliant. Skill levels improved. He used to come in and used to make a lot of mistakes, but his ability to tip at the line, win contact at the line, his defensive stopping power is brilliant. So I think those two in the All Blacks this tournament's going to be the two to watch.
Now, we will be talking to Bob Skinstad about Eddie Jones in a minute now, because they used to work together and we want to get the inside track. But as a disclaimer, right up front, I would just like to say, for all of your Australian World Cup info, head to our brother pod, sister pod, Gbra, the Good, the Bad and the Rugby Australia. They're a bit rogue. I mean, they're a bit wild. The Aussie trio, if you haven't met them yet, Gits, Adam Ashley Cooper and Drew Mitchell. And they'll be joining on the Good, the Bad and the Rugby cruise. So make sure you join them on that big old party boat. The quarterfinal weekend, the winners and runners-up of pools C and D will face off across 2 days in the Stade de Marseille. England, Wales, Australia and Argentina are going to have a serious challenge from Fiji and Samoa. We'll talk about them shortly. There's limited availability on board. So head to infinityrugby.io now to secure your place. Price includes food and drink, official match tickets, luxury accommodation and match transfers. Basically, everything's taken care of. Don't miss it. Now, for our Australian section, I don't know if you guys saw that video of Eddie with his hat. I don't have an Akubra for you, so apologies in advance to our Gbra friends. But I brought you guys some fitting attire. I know you're already wearing a cap, Nick, but
right.
just add to the layering there. There we go.
One
All
size
right.
fits most.
That one does
My
sit.
big pip doesn't even fit on that thing.
Cheapers, how big's your head?
It does awkwardly floats
There we
above.
go.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, I don't know if that's better now.
Who's that guy? Who's that guy in Toy Story?
Woody.
Woody.
Yeah,
Woody. Is it Woody? Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go, Uncle Woody.
Oh no, it's awful. Come on, guys. We needed not a medium. It's probably an XL. Doesn't even fit my pip.
It's my hat. Okay. I brought it to work.
Thank you.
Be nice.
That's very kind of you.
You worked with Eddie.
I did. Eddie's a great rugby guy. He's acerbic and difficult when he wants to be. He's joyous and triumphant and full of leadership qualities when he wants to be. And Eddie is Eddie. I've learned to not worry too much about who Eddie is, because he doesn't worry about who you are, And the thing is with him, you're seeing it on a day-to-day basis. He's back in at the Wallabies. He's engineered that job off the exit from England. I mean, standing ovation. Everybody was like, you see, we eventually got him. He was like, no, you didn't, mate. No, you didn't. I got all of you. And so well done. You got a payout here, went over there, got the best gig, for him that he has wanted for ages, and got back into the role straight away. I just think that the timing has been difficult, and it'll work itself out. I think he will work his way out. I find he goes into teams. He's got a different leadership style. I do think he probably fear and I wouldn't say fear and loathing in Las Vegas. I'd say fear and control. So he gets results very quickly, usually in most of his things, but struggles to maintain them because people run out of reasons to want to live and die for Eddie, as opposed to I better because otherwise I'm going to get dropped. And that is, you can just look at his career, you know. However, he is I've seen him do amazing off the field things. Turn up at clubs when he didn't have to train kids, help, you know, go into change rooms and talk to coaches and, you know, get kids excited about rugby again. I just think right at the top of the game, he just lives at 25 hours a day, more than anyone else. So you're going to see the bad bits, and someone's going to cut it and edit it and highlight it, and he's going to look grumpy and cross. And I feel sorry for that part of what we do, because it is a media merry-go-round.
But more than one thing can be true at the same time.
Of course.
As long as we retain enough space for all of those Eddies to exist, exactly. I think you'll get a full appreciation.
I think that's well said.
What was Eddie like in 07 under Jake White? And you guys had Alistair Coetzee as well in France. Yeah,
so Eddie was more a consultant. I mean, I think Jake and him had famously over the years had, you know, Eddie'd been at the Brumbies, and then, you know, they'd had sort of rivalries, if you want, you know, and had goes at each other, but then always had a barbecue afterwards and had a chat. And Jake was famously the same, you know. Jake has been a guy who's always reached out. I mean, Steve Hansen and those guys will come for a barbecue and talk rugby, because the media person is not the person that exists, like you said. So they can all exist and coexist. And I feel I'm oversharing, but like, with Eddie, even at that stage, he was a consultant to Jake. He didn't try and take over. He did the little bits that he needed to do, and he pushed where he needed to push, and he sort of prodded and got more out of the players than I think Jake would have, because Jake had so much to do. You know what I mean? When you got this whole squad to run and talk to media, and Eddie could just go in and say, you know, light a fire under someone's backside who hasn't been playing well enough, and motivate another guy. So it was great. It was like having an extra coach around who had time on his hands to do the bits that hadn't been got to by the main coach. I mean, I thought it was hugely positive. It was great having him there. I mean, you know, I was in that World Cup squad and certainly didn't ever feel that Eddie was driving any negative things. He was 100% on the journey with us. And then, you know, when we got to the World Cup final, in no way did he try and claim that as his World Cup or whatever. He was just slipped away into the shadows very quickly, and I always respected that. He certainly wasn't trying to, you know, jump in front of the camera at all.
Because people in South Africa spoke about him with. He's always been very widely respected. He was, I mean, if you rewind back to 2015, the week before Japan beat South Africa, we saw him in Brighton, and he was at that stage going to coach in Cape Town. And he still told me in an interview that his wife has said, it's time now, let's pack up our things. And he took the Cape Town job as a sort of lifestyle decision. Yeah. I mean, later for that, because obviously he's not nearly done yet.
Yeah, I don't, but is he ever done? I don't think I think he's one of those guys who, this is his stage. And he wants to be on it. He wants to be in the boat. He wants to be rowing the boat. And you know, they don't really want to ever leave the rugby circus.
Talk to me about Hansen coming in.
Yeah, we're going to do a Dane Coles and go, really? Like, I don't know. It may be another Eddie Jones masterstroke. I think it may be a similar situation to where Eddie comes in, only I believe for a short term, like he did for South Africa, come in, just rugby IQ around the group. The ability to have someone like Shag to come in and just feel out players that he may have think he's not quite got quite yet.
When we started talking, you said your time with England was so short before the first game, and generally your time with players is so short in international rugby. How much impact can Steve Hansen really have?
I don't think you could probably measure it. And again, it'll be whether it's a tool for Eddie or whether it's a tool for the players. It'll be up to Eddie to whether decide how Steve's being used, whether he uses him front and centre or whether he's behind the shadows and working with maybe the group. Obviously, they've had another turnover of staff just before they've left, so they're going to have a new coaching group that's going to be together. Maybe while Eddie needs to focus more on players, there's someone coming back in and helping the group behind what's going on, because Eddie does drive his group.
He does drive, and
very hard.
He drives him very, very hard. But in that kind of role, for Steve Hansen, it would be small margins.
Yeah.
You know, Steve, I've got a difficult situation because if that guy gets injured, these two guys are going to both be considered. If that causes a ruction, I don't know who's going to play outside or inside of those people. Can you tell me how they would feel, the two of them, if they were dropped or not? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can go for 2 days, have a lunch with a guy, come out and say, you know what, I've chatted to Nick. He's cool with it. He's ready to step up. Or, you know, because he's got 25 years, 30 years of rugby experience. He'll and that's what Eddie needs. He might just need one sentence. You know, that's probably what Jake asked Eddie to be there for that time. I don't think this is like someone coming in to usurp the sort of person in the role.
Not to question Steve Hansen's integrity, but it is a risk letting someone in, because this is still someone who has close ties to New Zealand, surely. And you might face New Zealand in the final if you're Australia.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's an issue around that. I don't think so. I think they both have got, depends, say what you say about Eddie, say what you say about Steve, they've both got rugby integrity, and I can't see that happening.
Not a worry.
Nah, not a worry.
Not a concern at all.
Not a concern at all.
Still going to... Okay.
Nah, not a concern.
There we go. That's the word from Nick Evans. I love that. Okay. How far can Michael Cheika take Argentina? We have not spoken about Argentina nearly enough. You have very high regard for this Argentine team.
They've turned over the top 3 other teams in the rugby championship in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, why would they not be credibly taken by every team in the world?
Massively under the radar.
Yeah.
And they've got a fantastic leader. Julian Montoya is one of the best leaders in the Premiership, but also I think World Rugby, speaking to a lot of people that have worked with him, he's team first, but he drives standards. He's ultra professional, and he drives a forward pack who I believe can match it with all of those forward packs that are going to the World Cup.
And they came and beat England at Twickenham in autumn 2022.
Yeah, their pedigree over the last few years. You beat New Zealand in our backyard. You come over and you beat England. Like, they've got some good confidence, and they'll cause a shock. They'll cause a shock.
And I love the way they play.
Yeah,
you know, they've still got the flair. So there's a bit of, it's like Argentina are becoming like a France when France are in their pomp. Like the forwards don't give an inch, but the backs run like silken, you know, in the wind. It's just amazing. So when they get that right, they beat anyone. They've proven it. They'll beat anyone in the world.
So everyone's beating everyone in this World Cup.
Basically, it's going to be carnage.
Portugal are going to win it. They're the only ones left.
Come on, Portugal! And in all seriousness, I think we're going to have to take these hats off, because I can't take any of what you're saying seriously at the moment. And now we welcome to the show, coming to us live from a hotel room, current Royal Navy, Northampton and Fiji hooker Sam Matavesi, gearing up for a second World Cup. Welcome to the Good, the Bad and the Rugby, Sam. And let's quickly, just to get going with, reflect on this weekend. You guys played against France. In front of that spectacular crowd in Nantes, the energy and the atmosphere just did look very good. And I guess it's, outside of scoring a win, the best result you could have hoped for, because both teams left with 23 fit players at the end of that. And so short before a Rugby World Cup, that's probably a big win.
No, it was good. It was an awesome atmosphere, awesome place. We stayed about an hour from Nantes in a place called Pornic. Like, awesome place. It reminded me a lot of Cornwall. So it was nice to feel a little bit back home. It was a good game. I'd obviously, like you said then, I think we wanted the win, but for us, it's progress. You know, we played Tonga, Samoa, and Japan, and then to play France and then England this week is further steps into our preparation for the World Cup.
Talk to me about the Simon Raiwalui era. It's short on the heels of a prolonged period that you guys had Vern Cotter. How much has that change in head coach changed things, especially considering Simon has worn the cap of every other person in that setup, including player. He knows how to do all of the jobs in your wider structure. What kind of head coach is he?
No, he's been outstanding. He's been very approachable, very personable. I think his biggest thing was to try and take us as a squad back to the village, you know, back to the people of Fiji, and try to reconnect and actually build bonds of the people. You know, the people. I think the last World Cup we were probably in the best hotel in Fiji for the whole time. So we're a bit out of the way. But he's been very good. I think when we lost Vern leading into the World Cup, it was pretty key. We kept Glenn Jackson, Daryl Gibson, Graham Dukes, people that have worked with us under Vern to sort of makes things a bit more easy in the transition.
Sam, Bob here. I mean, I think, physically the Fijian players have shown all through Europe, whether it's French League or in the Prem or in the URC, that they're not short on physical ability and certainly speed and that kind of thing. Do you think that the Fijian teams are looking for maybe that slight connection more with a sort of a set piece play to allow the, let's call it, the fireworks to happen in the backs and the counter-attack type rugby? Are you getting closer and closer to that?
Yeah, I think we are. I think, from 4 years ago, a couple of years ago, I think we're a different team. We're certainly training a bit differently, a lot more with the ball in play, a lot more fitness, trying to play the game where the tier 1 nations are. I think if we can cut out some silly mistakes and can give our backs the clean and quick ball that they need, I think we'll beat most teams.
Yeah, mate. Sam, just wondering. Just obviously loved watching the Drua and the Super Rugby and having a core group of them involved in the squad. How does that help with cohesion leading into the World Cup?
Yeah, I think as we've seen for the Drua, they've been outstanding. They finished in the top 8 this year. Got a quarter final to the Crusaders, who eventually won. I think there's more Fijian Drua players than there are European-based players, which is probably the first time that's ever happened. I think if the way that the Drua can go and can keep going, I think hopefully in the next 12 years it will be every player will be from Fiji and playing in Fiji, hopefully. But I think it's good. It's helping us. And I think with that sprinkled with some experience and some stars in Europe, it's going to help. It's a good blend.
Talk to us about the ones to watch in the Fijian setup at the moment. Of course, the players who are stomping their way across rugby pitches here in the Northern Hemisphere are widely respected and well loved. But there is so much youth and depth here. And as we've talked about in Super Rugby, these guys have had an opportunity to really build their performance and their consistency.
No, it's so true. There's some incredible players. Tavita Canaveri, the young hooker, and then Vinya Habossi, who just signed for Racing. These boys are some stars, and I think they're going to show the world, what they can do over the next few months. The best thing with these boys, and I don't know if the lads sitting down have played with Fijians, but they don't realise how good they are, and I think how good they can be. So hopefully, with these players, playing in Super Rugby in Fiji and at the top level, it's going to be. It's all going to be good for Fiji.
So South Africa has made the most of this eligibility change that came in by luring back John Klein. Everyone talks about it as something that only benefited Pacific Island teams, but I would just like to point out that there are a few countries who've done well out of it.
Not only that, so Sam, I was born in Zimbabwe, and so was Tendai Mtawarira, and we used to sit around some dinners say one day they're going to let us back in, but unfortunately my time was gone. Maybe they get back in. But how do the guys feel about that? I think what a great opportunity to have people who've qualified for another country, aren't necessarily in the broader squad there, but be able to still play the game that we all love and represent somewhere that they wouldn't have maybe had the chance to before. How does the squad feel? Is it good to see some old friends and some guys you've played against before?
Yeah, personally, I think it's what the rugby needs, to see the best players every 4 years at a World Cup. It's similar to rugby league. I'm not too sure how they do it, but they always have the stars that either playing for Tonga or Samoa or Fiji. We had one. Nathan Hoos came back to help us out with some numbers in Japan at training. But for us, it's not that many. I think that they're trying to focus on the players they've got and the players that they want to bring through from the Drua. But for me personally, I think it's a good rule that it can happen. Everyone wants to see the best players at the World Cup.
And if you have not been paying attention to this story, Tonga has Adam Coleman coming back from Australia, Charles Piutau, Malakai Fekitoa, Vaya Fafita, and George Moala. That's just massive. I mean, the impact those guys can make. Any country would say, yeah, please come through. Welcome. Samoa has Charles Fuimuina, Stephen Luatua, Lima Sapuanga, Christian Lealiofano. First three from New Zealand, of course, and then Christian from Australia. Do
the All Blacks pay a compensation? Does Nick get to have to pay a fine for having taken them?
There we go. I can tell you a funny story. I can get a Canadian passport, and
I've got an Irish passport.
And there actually was before this eligibility rule changed. there was a rule that if you actually went back and played three sevens tournaments,
Okay.
you could go the way through. I was 37 at the time, and they were like, "Oh, you can play threes and sevens tournaments." I was like, "No. I'm out. I'm going to retire instead. I'll retire instead."
What is scarier, being 37 and having to play another 3 Rugby World Cups, or being 37 and having to go to 3 sevens
I
tournaments?
was
No,
out.
that's far
The sevens
scarier, I
tournament, I
promise
was
you.
out. I was
Sevens
gone.
you can't hide from anyone.
I'm not hiding from anything. Yeah.
It's a wild challenge, but also a phenomenal opportunity. And we're so excited to see these people in action, making contributions and making the most of longer turnaround times between fixtures, which is something that Eliota Fuimanisopolu was sanctioned for, complaining about back in 2011, was
Well,
it?
he made a good point.
Turns out, if you speak out about some things, initially it might be unpopular, but the world sometimes they see the light eventually, right?
Eventually.
And that is all that Sam is going to be saying on the topic. He doesn't want to get into any trouble. Really exciting to see all of these names. Israel Folau, the bogeyman, that so many people have been looking at, kind of side-eyeing, going, is he going to be back in? He's not available for Tonga because of injury. And Telusa Vianu as well. George Moala's ban has been reduced to 5 weeks, which is why he's been included, and 4 former All Blacks. What are you laughing at, Sam?
No comment.
No comment. So the opportunity to play at Twickenham, talk to us about this and how large that featured in your planning for this year, for this tournament, for this period. How important is it?
Yeah, it's a massive game. I think, to play England in their own backyard is massive. I think, I don't know if you spoke about it already, you're going to probably England probably aren't really want to be at the minute. But I think for us, if you watched last week, if we can focus on ourselves, and it sounds quite cliche, and we can fix up some errors and hold the ball a bit longer and a bit better, then I think we can hopefully release the people that we have out wide that everyone's talked about. But yeah, I've got friends that play for England and play at the same club, so you don't want to see these people down to that much, if that makes sense.
You don't? Come on.
Yeah,
At Twickenham.
I'll do this week, but after that,
That's very friendly of you. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with wanting to beat your mates. A little bit of bragging rights. Tell me, you would have watched England the way they're battling at the moment, preparing for a World Cup. But we know historically they're the kind of team who can put it together quite quickly. Do you see a resurgence coming at a World Cup if this is difficult for them leading into it? And do you see it as an opportunity for you to maybe, are they vulnerable enough for Fiji to hurt them on the weekend?
England are awesome. They've got class players everywhere. I genuinely think for us, if we can concentrate on ourselves and shore up the set piece a bit, a few less penalties in defence, and then hope England keep kicking us the ball, that won't be too bad for us.
Good man. Good luck.
Sam, just leading into the World Cup, as a group, do you have you guys set goals, or have you targeted certain a passage through or a way to get out of this group, or is it you're gonna throw the cliche just one game at a time, or how's that been going?
No, I think internally we spoke about how we want to go and what we want to do, and obviously you want to turn up and you want to win, so that's the first thing. And I think the problem is, obviously 4 years ago I was here, we as a squad we put so much into the Australia game, we probably didn't give Uruguay as much credit and respect as we should have, clearly, and we lost. So like you said then, obviously our main aim is Wales on September the 10th, and then we have to go from there.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sam. It was great to chat.
No, thanks for having me. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great opportunity for a lot of guys in that Fijian side to really plough back the experience, the understanding, and the deep personal knowledge that they have from playing over here on a pitch like Twickenham, to not be too overawed by the moment and the occasion and the location.
Yeah, what I loved about that is obviously the lot of talk about bringing people from Fiji, Drua. That's where they want all most of their players to be coming from, and they want to get to a point where all players are coming from that pathway. I love that. We got Tabs at Quins, who is very passionate about that as well, and speaks real highly of the young transitions that young Fijian rugby players get, and the Fiji Drua is brilliant for them. Obviously, the stars that get the opportunities will come back and help them out, and I love that. I mean, I won't say we all know, but the Fijian side is going to be a lot of people's second favourite side They'll be my second favourite side. I love watching them play.
Big
They
time.
play. They play like you do in the backyard. Used to do in the backyard, and I think they've got an opportunity to create a shock. And it wouldn't surprise me if they go and beat Wales first up, and then who knows what happens after that.
Well, it sets up for what promises to be a very compelling Rugby World Cup. And it's been really great just having an opportunity to chat to you guys and also put the Southern Hemisphere front and centre as much as the Northern Hemisphere, I think, can tolerate us. We're not going anywhere. There's one of us in every room in London. If it's not a South African, it's a Kiwi. The World Cup final is on the 28th of October, and 2 days later, Tins Hask and Payno will be heading out across the UK on a theatre tour for the ages. So if you already know you're going to be in on a World Cup come down, book your tickets, have something to look forward to. They're heading to, this is going to sound like I'm doing the voice announcement on the train, so stick in here with me. Guildford, London, Swansea, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Northampton, Reading, Oxford, Leicester, Birmingham, Westcliff-on-Sea, Exeter, Plymouth. I'm already tired. Newcastle, Nottingham, Manchester, and Bath.
Wow, nice.
So they're going to do the whole World Cup and they're going to do this. They are crazy. It's a World Cup after party. So basically everything they can't tell you about on this here podcast. And I mean, have you listened to the lock-in? They'll be able to tell you then on this big old crazy tour all over the UK. Thank you so much for joining us, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Bob.
Thanks, great to be here. Appreciate it.
And thank you for sticking with us as Southern Hemisphereites through this wild old ride to the other side of the equator. We've been The Good, the Bad and the Rugby in partnership with our friends at Continental Tires. The Good, the Bad and the Rugby is a folding pocket production produced by Shira Kilgallen and Tom Edwards.